Good afternoon. My name is Lucy. I want you to know that this is my very, very first time on social media. And the only reason why I'm doing this is because I think that I feel actually very strongly that we're going through a very difficult time in our country. And this is the reason why I'm here. And I'm sorry that I'm going to use some notes to go through this. I am a little nervous, so forgive me for that. And I do have an accent because I was born and raised in Argentina. My parents, okay, like I said, I'm just going to have to do this. My parents were born and raised in Italy. Eventually they moved with their respective families. I think it was in the 50s. Yes, in the 50s they moved to Argentina. They met there. They had their children there. And unfortunately, because of the situation in Argentina, the unstable economy, all the issues with governmental issues and all that, my father, at one point in the 70s, decided to come to the United States. He came here with an employment contract. He became an American permanent resident. That's what you call a green card. And eventually, once he became a permanent resident, we stayed behind in Argentina to begin with, and then we received the documentation from the American Embassy, immigration actually, with all the requirements for us to move, all the legal requirements. And that's a lot of them, which is perfectly fine. That's the way things should be done. What I'm addressing today, and again, in order for me to illustrate the points that I'm trying to make, I have to give you a couple of personal stories, things that I've been through, things that happened to me. I'm not in any way, shape, or form pretending to be a victim. That's not who I am. I'm only illustrating these points, and I consider myself a very, very lucky person because somehow these things happen, but I always find out what happens and then I can remedy those situations. So anyway, this is 1978, sometime in July, I would think, 1978. We're in Buenos Aires, Argentina. My mom receives the paperwork, the documentation from the United States Immigration Service. And we're asked to fulfill those requirements in order for us to move here legally. The one that I'm going to talk about is the medical requirements. We had to get a medical checkup. We had to get all our vaccines up to date. We had them, but we needed to have all that updated. And a major thing that needed to be done, we were tested for tuberculosis. I don't know if you're aware what the tuberculosis test is, but it's a very minor test. They do it right here in your forearm. It's a little needle that goes under the skin and develops a little bubble. And then after 3 days, they read the results. They're either positive or you test negative. It's that simple. We all tested negative. So in no time, we were able to move here. My father was already here, like I said. And we moved from Buenos Aires. The plane arrived to JFK, from JFK to Philadelphia. That was, we lived in that house. My parents lived there until my father passed away. My mom was there until last year. My father immediately signed us up to go to school. So now it's January of 1979. I want you to be aware of that. That was and I wrote it someplace, the Jimmy Carter, Walter Mondale administration. So my father immediately signed up us to go to school. I'm 15 years old at the time. In those first few months, that I'm attending public school, it was only for me to take classes in English as a second language. So I was there from February until June. In those few months that I was there, well, this had already been happening in the United States. The United States is receiving all these refugees from places like Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, places that were war-torn. And so I had just received everything. My TB test, of course, we all tested negative, like I said. We moved here, I'm going to school, and tuberculosis broke out among the refugees. So the health department comes in, and even though we had just been tested, we're all retested. We're being called, not my parents, I'm saying the people in the school. These long lines in the auditorium were retested. My parents get a letter in the mail advising them that I had tested positive just within a few months of being in the United States. The Board of Health sent a letter saying that I had tested positive and therefore I needed to receive treatment. Treatment for being infected with tuberculosis is 1 full year of antibiotics. This is again 1979. I understand that right now the treatment is only 6 months, but regardless, I fulfilled that treatment. It was taken care of. Now, unfortunately, tuberculosis never leaves you. For the rest of your life, you're going to be test positive. That doesn't mean you're infected. That doesn't mean you're sick. Doesn't mean you're contagious. You're just going to test positive. And because of the job that I was doing, I needed to test myself every so often. And of course, like I said, you always test positive. So the next step is simple. They just do a chest X-ray. The X-ray comes out negative, and you will go on with your life. And you can work and do whatever you have to do. So the point that I'm making, and the reason why I'm telling you this 45 years later, and again, forgive me, but if I don't do this, I'm not going to get through it. So I will start, like I just told you, my background. So all this stuff happens. Now, what happens? I'm really confused because here I am coming into the country 45 years ago, doesn't matter. And I immediately get infected. And I say to myself, because you learn these things as you going through school. What is the first priority of the government? Well, the first number one priority of any government in the United States is the protection and safety of its citizens. I was not a citizen yet, but I was a permanent resident. I was here legally undocumented. That's what being legal is. You have your own documents. So now I just don't understand as to what is going on in our country. And first of all, I want to make sure that I address this issue. In no way, shape, or form do I hold the President, Joe Biden, responsible for any of the things that have taken place in the last 4 years. The poor man had dementia 4 years ago, and we clearly saw it. He has dementia now. We all see it. Dementia is a progressive condition. It doesn't get better. So people tell me, oh, he was pressured by the Democratic Party to run against Donald Trump and blah, blah, blah. And I say to myself, was it really just pressure? Because this is not just about Joe Biden. This is his wife. And let me tell you, as a woman, as a wife that I am, it would take a lot more than just pressure to sacrifice my husband, knowing that he has this awful condition, which just absolutely devastating to watch a person go through this. And what you want to do is protect them. You want to be there for them. You want them to have this peaceful, comfortable life where they get up every day, they put on their comfy clothes, shoes they can walk in, and just, go for walks, eat your breakfast, eat your lunch together, go through your memories, pictures, make sure they're aware of what day it is. Every single thing has to be planned out. There's always doctor's visits. So in no way, shape, or form do I hold this poor man and his wife responsible for the things that have taken place in the past 4 years. As a matter of fact, I think they're victims in this situation. But I do hold the Democratic Party responsible for this. 10 million people were brought into this country illegally during a pandemic. And I cannot even say illegally because the government brings them in. If the government brings you in, you're not illegal. You're just undocumented, exposing us to all kinds of things. So I asked myself, I said, do they hate us that much that they want all of us to get sick? My answer is no. And I think, do they love thy neighbor that much that they want to help out everybody? And my answer is no. So I said to myself, what the heck is going on? And in order for me to illustrate that point, I have to tell you another story that just happened to me the last summer, 2023, going into this year, January 2024. Last summer was an incredible, difficult time for our family. My mom, who's now an elderly woman who has her health issues like all of us, but especially when you get up there in your 80s, and one of her major issues is osteoporosis. So last summer, this poor woman is having one compression fracture after the other, all the L's, one after the other, and other real difficult issues. So I live in New Jersey. I go to stay with my mother, of course, full time. At that point, my mom, the house, it's a 2-story house. We had turned the living room into basically the bedroom, everything. We had a hospital bed for her and another one for me. So she only was on the first floor, and she was bedridden at that time. And every time, because there were other health issues that I don't want to discuss, nor do they come to the point, every time we had to hospitalize her, we called an ambulance. In order for the paramedics to take her into the ambulance, the first thing they had to do was put in what is called a transport chair. So this poor woman with all these fractures, in excruciating pain, first it has to be put in this chair. Then they go down this 5 steps that go into and out of the house onto the sidewalk where they have the stretcher. Then they put it on the stretcher and into the ambulance. And that's how it was last summer. It was absolutely awful. So at one point, we decided that the house was no longer conducive to her needs. So we immediately got a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom apartment, all on the first floor, all handicap accessible. And we moved my mom right in. The house, of course, the day we were actually moving her, we have a moving truck. We hadn't said anything to anybody. This is happening. One of the neighbors saw the moving truck, and these people came over and said, "What's going on? Are you moving?" And we said, "Yes, this is happening with my mom, blah, blah, blah." So he said, "Oh, are you going to sell the house?" And we said, "Eventually." So I'm really interested in this house. I always loved this house. So I said, okay, we exchanged phone numbers, and eventually they bought the house. But before this took place, what happens is we're moving from a big house to a smaller apartment. So you have a lot of things to give away. And at that point, we were not interested in selling anything on anybody's list. We just wanted it gone. So here we are with all this furniture. My mom is a very clean, very neat woman, but she had lived there for 44 years. You have a lot of stuff, and she did. Not just furniture, tools that my father belonged to my father, who had passed away, blah, blah, blah. So somebody, and I don't even remember who, said, "Oh, I know this couple from North Philadelphia, and they could really use a lot of this stuff." So I said, "Absolutely, call them. We're still in the house. This is prior to us moving." So they came at this absolutely lovely, lovely Spanish couple. And they came, we showed them things we were not taking, and we said, "Take whatever you need." So sure enough, they filled up their truck on that, but we had more things, and they didn't have any more room to move it on one trip. So we exchanged phone numbers, and I got friendly with this woman. Very nice, lovely woman.